Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the state of New York now having a redistricting battle across the state as a lawsuit from a DC law firm, the Elias Law Group, which has been responsible for the Democratic Party's successes across a number of states in getting redraws done by state Supreme Courts and other courts across the country. We see that they are now targeting the New York City district, the only district in New York City that has voted for a Republican here, and that is New York's 11th congressional district. The only Republican member of Congress in New York City comes into this district, to which the Democratic Law Group is arguing violates and unfairly disenfranchises Black and Latino residents in the city. Now, it's no surprise that we are now seeing this raised as a concern just days before the 2025 election and right around the time for the 2026 midterms. Republicans across the country, including right here on the Reshaping Congress tracker here on the New York Times, North Carolina and Indiana stand out as two red states. North Carolina as one state that has already redrawn their map to remove an additional Democratic seat, and Indiana, which looks like it's very possible that might happen in the upcoming week. Now, this lawsuit going into the city of New York doesn't seem to come by accident, and doesn't seem like this is something that just felt like it stumbled on the Democrats as they look to the 26 midterms. This is something that must have been very intentionally calculated about what they're looking to do for the 2026 midterms, and seeing that they are appealing to the New York Supreme Court, which actually is not the highest court of the land in the state of New York. That is actually the New York Court of Appeals, the only state in the country where the Supreme Court does not have final determining factor. It's clear where they're going first and what their ultimate goal is doing, which ultimately is that if the Democratic justices, both who control the New York State Supreme Court and the New York Court of Appeals, side with the Democrats could gain an additional seat in New York without having to do any of the theatrics around redrawing their map across the state. And New York has been in a very interesting position given the last presidential cycle and what Kathy Hochul, who herself was victim to a gerrymander in the state of New York, a little known history about her time in office is she only came to be lieutenant governor because she was forced out of Congress as Republicans drew an excessive gerrymander to ensure that she would lose her reelection. What we saw very quickly was that as she got closer to the 2020 census redraw, she was not governor at the time, but did oversee the redrawing of the map and signed it into law. She actually wanted a more expansive gerrymander, but the courts ultimately said no and struck it back down because it was quite extreme what they were looking for, a 22-4 map. Right now, Democrats are working with a 19-7 map, so it's not too bad for the Democrats. Certainly a gerrymander, but to the extent that it could have gone further, 1,000%, which is why New York is looking not to 2026 because they don't have the legal means of doing it ahead of the 26 cycle, but to 2028 to potentially redraw their congressional districts to give Democrats additional seats across the state. But that is something that is going to be a little bit later down the line. So in terms of immediate action, there was not much that the Democrats could do in the state of New York. They were pretty much, held off across the state. And ultimately, what you were going to find is that in the state of New York, the earliest the map redraw could happen would be 2028. And even then, there was no guarantee that it was going to pass through the legislature as easily as it is passing now in California through Proposition 50. So this now seems to be the last-minute resort for Democrats to try to get an additional district. I don't disagree, with the fundamentals of this argument, but I do think that it is absolutely, noticeable at the timing at which it comes and what the intentionality is behind lawsuits like these. If the Democrats are successful in arguing their court case, which they very well might not be, but they also very well could be, New York, again, is a partisan court, you will find that district in specific, the one they're focusing on, is right down here. New York's 11th congressional district, the only district that has a Republican representative from the city of New York. And if it is drawn in a way that reenfranchises, as the Democratic group is arguing, Black and Latino voters, no doubt in my mind, that district reminds me similarly to that of what was done in Alabama in 2022. We saw that there were 6 Republicans and just 1 Democratic seat. Successfully making that case, the Democrats did, to a 3-judge panel, all Trump-appointed justices, as well as to the United States Supreme Court, that Alabama must draw an additional Democratic seat, not one that was safe for the Democrats, but an opportunity district that gave them the opportunity at winning this district and increasing black representation from the state of Alabama, effectively cutting down the Republican seats from 6 to 5. In the city of New York, you could find that because Democrats already hold such a significant advantage across the state itself, what they would do essentially is draw out some of these Democratic areas right down here and make them into the Republican region. That way, this district would be similar to that of that Alabama district that wouldn't be, Democrats plus 51 like Hakeem Jeffries' district is, but it would be somewhere around the edge of potentially, Democrats plus 7, Democrats plus 8. And I think that's what the goal is here for Democrats, because they know if that happens, New York's 11th district would be an automatic flip, and then New York can stand in as one of the states that is helping nullify some of the Republican gains that we are seeing across the country. Because I think that New York, in a way, as one of the largest Democratic states in the country, which has the advantages in the state legislature, they have the governor's mansion. I mean, they have the means to redraw the map for 2028, but they're throttled by the timeline that they implemented in the state constitution. Democrats who put forth, this initiative way back when to try to lead the way on ending gerrymandering across the country, New York very much was part of that. And looking at just how they could navigate a mid-decade redraw, it's near impossible to do it right before 2026. It just simply cannot happen. And so looking at 2028, I think 3 years is too far out. They see the headlines out of Virginia. They see them out of the state of California, now dubbed as Newsom's confidence, but very obviously makes sense. Newsom recently went to the Democratic donors in the state and said, stop giving me money. We're out. We're winning this race. We don't need a single more dollar spent on Prop 50. This race is a done deal. The Republicans in the state of California also announced that they're withdrawing from the race, not focusing on it, that it's a done deal. They didn't do this publicly, but this is what, gets told through advisors and confidential memos that get leaked to the press. The point is, Republicans know they're cooked in the state of California. After the 2025 cycle, they will probably be cooked in the state of Virginia, and I think New York wants to be part of that. And the only real way that is possible is if a court intervenes, ruling that an existing map disenfranchises voters. And in this case, it would be a case to be made surrounding race, which what we know that historically, the districts that are made to be opportunity districts for Black and Latino voters oftentimes are the most Democratic districts because they are drawn to ensure that representation is possible and not just made a reality in a one-off year. And so that's what the targeting is here in New York's 11th district. I think it's one that, took me by surprise when I read the argument. I thought that, this is certainly something that if it was, meant to be, would have happened years ago, right into the 24 cycle before that map had been implemented. But I think that, again, there's always a case to be made. Maybe the Democrats just simply didn't want to raise it back then, which is very possible, right? That they got a map that they felt very comfortable with that was undoubtedly expanding where the Democrats were in 2022. I mean, this is what the courts mandated when the Democrats went too far on the gerrymander in 2020. It was 19-8 in 2022, and obviously a lot of down-ballot lag because of Kathy Hochul's performance at the top of the ticket. But you'll still see here, right? The maps are different because the boundaries are drawn in a way that even in 2024, when Kamala Harris had the smallest margin in the state of New York of any Democrat dating back all the way, I think you have to go to 2000, not even 2004, or 2000, I think you'd have to go back way further to find, a margin similar to this in 1988, when Michael Dukakis won this state by just 4 points, was the last time New York was this narrow compared to the 2024 election. And so to see that this was, in fact, a lot less blue counties across the state, and also not to mention the margin is just tremendously different. Biden won the state by 24 points here, 23 points. Kamala Harris won it by roughly 13. I mean, massive difference here. The point is, though, even with that historic underperformance, Democrats still got 19 seats. And the Republicans were only up by 6 and 10 in the respective districts here. In an environment where Democrats are outpacing by 10, Democrats still could expand. But the one district they could not get is the New York 11th district, which Democrats are seeking to find the courts make a remedial map that would draw this district in a way that benefits the Democratic Party quite overwhelmingly. I mean, what the purpose here is to draw out this district, and that even in 2026, in the drawing out of the district, it could allow, let's say the courts give free rein to the Democrats, not just to redraw the district, but adjust the surrounding ones. It won't do enough that you could usher in a brand new congressional map, because there would be no reason to adjust New York 19, New York 18, New York 22, which are the more competitive ones. But maybe you could shore up the 4th district, which Democrats are barely winning. Maybe you could shore up the 3rd district, which Democrats are barely winning. Maybe you could start to see changes here and an undoubtedly expanded advantage for the Democrats in the state of New York, giving them 20-6. And that 1-seat gain may seem largely inconsequential, but as Republicans now have a 1-seat gain in Missouri, a 1-seat gain in North Carolina, 5-seat gain in Texas, any type of change to the map to benefit the Democratic Party will help counteract what the Republicans have been doing all across the country. And rather than just changing the map in the middle of the year without asking voters to vote on it, they'll have to vote on it in Virginia. They're voting on it in less than a week in California. In Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina, they just did it. Right, the majority of Texas residents said, I don't want a new congressional map. I don't want to start what is likely going to be the end of, democratic institutions being valued on the congressional level, right? Because what we know is that this is not the end. It will continue into 2028. It will continue into 2030 and well after the next census redraw. But we have to remember, it is the Republicans who started it. And historically, the Democrats would not have fought back. But now they are. They're willing to go tit for tat with the GOP. They're willing to push back against an administration that is willing to arguably steal seats from the Democratic Party for their own electoral gain, knowing that they're about to be blown out of the water in the 2026 midterms. It's no secret why Donald Trump is doing what he is doing, but it also goes to show, one, how desperate the GOP stands today, and two, exactly what Democrats are putting forth, lawsuits like these. We'll have to wait and see. Is New York State going to be successful in striking down the New York 11th district? Maybe, maybe not. But it does go to show that Democrats are leaving no stones unturned in New York and in many other parts across the country in terms of trying to change their congressional boundaries to mitigate the losses the Republicans are manufacturing across this country as they change their maps to benefit their party going into a midterm election where the Democratic Party undoubtedly is expected to do quite well. The GOP wants to stop that by any means possible. The question is, do all Democrats have what it takes to fight back too? So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. Make sure to check out a video on your screen and a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.